Hey everybody, and welcome to the Artisan School. The Artisan School, where we talk about everything that is piano craft. We teach all week long. Usually, sometimes when we're doing some construction and doing some other stuff, we kind of take a little bit of a break doing all week long, but no matter what, we try to do stuff every week, and today's no exception. Wippens are the worst. That's literally what we're talking about today. And I'm going to kind of preface this for those that are watching and be like, who is this guy? Wippens are the best. What do we want? Single escapement actions? We want everything to be the upright? No. I'll be real with you. When you're starting out, uprights, when things come together, you're just like, man, I got this. I figured this out. The upright piano, I understand it. And then when you start to move into the grand pianos, you're like, everything feels like I get some of the core concepts, but when it comes to some of these grand things, things aren't lining up, things are not working. And so for me, when I started at 15 years old, I was like, I think I got this upright regulation thing dialed in. And when I moved to the grand, there were so many little things pertaining to this guy, the Wippen, that were just always going over my head, which made it so that I couldn't really regulate to the level that I wanted to. And I couldn't figure out why. So today's lesson is just kind of dissecting the grand Wippen, specifically the grand Wippen, and two major things that can go on with the Wippen that makes it impossible for you to regulate the grand properly. And we literally have this happening with one of our newest employees, one of our newest techs. He was like, hey, I'm not able to get this consistency. It seems sporadic. And we looked at it together, and sure enough, one of these issues was happening. When we fixed that, everything fell in line. So does this resonate with anybody else? Or are you guys like, no, you're a hack. Wippens are easy. Grand regulation's the easiest thing since ever. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
I probably need help.
I haven't had a chance to work on enough grands to actually get into where I'm dealing with regulation. And right now I've been dealing with 60-year-old grands that just need
to be tuned.
Needs to get to a basic tuning, so then you can start figuring out what's truly wrong with it.
After today, I might disagree because I don't know if dampers beat Wippens. I don't know.
Yes. Maybe the next one will be dampers are the worst. Today Wippens are the worst. Tomorrow dampers are the worst.
Instead of rock, paper, scissors, we have flanges, dampers, and Wippens.
Take your pick of pain.
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of simplify the Wippen. And the reality is the grand Wippen right here, there are four main adjustments that need to be made or could be made. And they are as follows: the rep lever tension right here, so how fast or slow that hammer will pop up. The jack to knuckle position right here, so that's 2. Number 3 would be the rep lever height right there. And the reality is number 4 is just kind of that jack, the let off. And so I'm kind of putting that to the side. But these 3, the jack alignment to the knuckle, the rep lever, and then the spring tension is kind of the things that we need to talk about, because when one of those are off, it's surprisingly destructive to your regulation and to the playability of the piano. There's really 3 main tools that you need for the grand Wippens. So obviously you need, a screwdriver to space and align this Wippen left or right, or to get it out and remove it. But for the most part, it's these 2. You have your heart spring tool right here, which is a core tool. It's an essential tool. Whether you use the heart spring tool, you need some kind of a spring removal tool to be able to come in here, go through, and just open up that spring and then put it back in place. Simple tool. And then I like these, really they're drop screw regulators, but I use them for these two adjustments all day long. This is a drop screw regulator, and I use these for these two adjustments all day long. Now, the biggest thing that happens as you move from as you evolve in your piano craft journey, you're going to get to the point where, you know, I'm understanding my let off, I'm understanding my dip, I'm understanding kind of this idea of blow distance. So you really get to the point where the three main contributors to your aftertouch, you start to kind of figure it out, and you basically kind of have it dialed. So the problem arises with having inhibitors to get those three adjustments made. And so we're talking about consistency and what goes into that. And a lot of times these Wippens are what's causing the issue. So the other day we were going through, Daniel, he's a phenomenal technician, and he was doing a great regulation, but we had this issue with consistency. So if you note, I've set this one up to kind of emulate what was happening. So this far note right here, if you notice, check the level of it. So here they're at rest. And so you can see this one is a little bit higher. And then all of a sudden it's really high. And then it's even lower. So this was the issue that kept on happening. It was back checking fine. The rep lever tension was fine. It was coming up. The let off was fine. But for whatever reason, he would go to kind of set his hammer line, and sometimes it was a little high like it is right now, and sometimes it was right on. You see that? Is that coming through, Stacy, on your end? Where it's, okay, it's a little high. Great. Oh, wait, shoot. Now it's low. So he kept on battling this, like raising it, lowering it, raising it, lowering it, and could not figure out what the issue was. He was able to kind of figure out, okay, the jack is in alignment with the knuckle, no issue there. What in the world is this issue? Has anybody run into this right off the bat? Does anybody know what the issue in this case is? If not, that's totally fine. It's kind of a weird issue.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Ready for it? So the back checking is set. It's working. The repetition lever, or excuse me, the rep springs are set. But what happens here, Victor, is I'll play the note, and it falls, and now it's high, and then it's low, and then it's high again when it rebounds, and it's not consistent. And so it's been we're having a hard time making sure, hey, what's the blow distance? Because every other time we hit this, it changes for up or down. What do you think the issue is?
What are you watching?
Oh, Jeff, are you talking? Because we can't hardly hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Be quiet.
Yeah, if you like hold the microphone and we'll
barely hear you.
There you go.
What are you watching specifically for up jump? I don't know if I can see the whole.
Okay. Okay, so look at right here the level of these three hammers. I'm going to lower one of them, this one, so that it's a little more in line. But what I'm talking about is basically the blow distance. Specifically, we want these three hammers to be in line, right? That's our hammer blow distance. We want it set. And what's happening is every time I hit this note, it's going, and sometimes it's down low and it's where it needs to be. Like, as you can see, it's right in line. But other times I'm going, and you see how it's now higher than the others? It's inconsistently rebounding and then staying up high versus going back where it should be. So it's not consistent. There, it's set right there. Great. Another blow. Great. But then in some cases, it's up again. So the question is, why is it doing that? Why can't we get it consistent every time, have it fall into the right place? That's the big question. And that's the question that we had the other day.
Is that an alignment issue of the Wippen?
Nope.
The repetition lever, the jack, is it going, it's not hitting the same distance down? Is there something between those two?
Robert, you're spot on. The issue with this right now is the repetition lever itself is adjusted so that it is too high. So basically, this adjustment needs to be made here to bring this down, because that jack is floating, if you will. That jack is floating because this repetition lever is pushed up too high, which is elevating that hammer ever so slightly. So this jack is just swimming, which shows you just the importance of doing the jack winking. And we've talked about this before, and that's this, you can see my finger down here below. I'm winking this jack. And so watch this. It's just swimming. There's no contact at all. Yes, we figured out Robert for the win. There's no contact with that knuckle whatsoever. And I'm not sure if you can really see it, but this was the kind of the dead giveaway, was looking down at this jack right here is so much lower than this repetition lever.
Oh yeah, that's obvious because it's so deep.
Yeah,
It
you
should
see
be
how deep that is?
really close to being flush.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so if this adjustment isn't just right, kiss your regulation goodbye. It's not going to have that consistency. It's going to be all over the place, and you're going to get so frustrated, just like Daniel was the other day. It's like every other time I hit it, my blow distance is just right. It's lined up, but then I hit it again and it's too high or too low. And so what we're going to do is simply using our regulation, drop through regulator, I'm going to adjust this down, and then I'm going to go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to go, oh man, that's just kind of right in line. I can just feel it rubbing ever so slightly, that knuckle. And sure enough, let's test it out. Are we getting it rebounding just right? Yep. Every time it's sinking back down to where it should be with the others dialed in.
What do you call that part you adjusted?
Say it again.
What do you call that part you just adjusted?
This is the repetition lever screw, the rep lever screw right here.
Yeah, for adjusting the rep lever height.
Screw, yeah, I would say the rep lever height adjustment, rep lever height screw. This needs to be figured out fairly early on in the regulation. Just kind of like, okay, is this causing an issue? That being said, you do need to get a little bit further in the regulation. You need to make sure that you have the repetition springs, at least to a point where it's baseline, it's lifting them up, because that will be a factor in this. But if you're having this inconsistency of like, wow, it just doesn't seem like I can dial this in and have it, every keystroke have it be the same, this is usually the culprit. And so this is something to kind of keep in mind. It is so frustrating, especially early on, because you're like, I'm going through all the steps. I'm going through my let off. I did my rep lever. I'm doing it. It should be fine. So many technicians forget the winking of the jacks. It's so common to forget that. So just so you know, that's a core issue that a lot of people have with the repetition or with the Wippens, and it's a fairly easy fix. The other one that I remember coming to, and I still come to this, but because I've done it enough, I know what to kind of look for. I'm going to show you this. I've removed the dampers to kind of make it so that we can more easily see it. Let me see. So, where was it? Here's this one. Ah, yeah, here we go. So here's my middle note. So it's the sharp. And this happens a lot, especially the pianos that you're going to come to. These grand pianos that haven't been really serviced aside from tuning, you're going to go through and be like, okay, I want to kind of get some regulation going. And one of the things I'm missing is when I go and just try to go through let off, I'm not feeling anything. I'm not feeling any kind of a bump. It's not really letting off, and I can't figure out what in the world is going on. It's back checking. The rep lever or the repetition springs are nicely done. What is going on? And this, my friends, is something that is a very easy fix, but for whatever reason, we as technicians can get in our heads about it and be like, well, I guess maybe it's my dip. Maybe it's the back checking. What's going on? And so we usually go to let off right away. We start to go through and be like, okay, well, if it's not letting off right, I'm just going to go ahead and adjust this. And we start to adjust it and we're like, it's not working at all. What is going on? I'm not getting any let off whatsoever. Tell me what the issue is.
Your drop?
Who said that? Victor, yes. It is the drop. And so it's good. It's a good thing whenever we're kind of going to a piano, just to simply, again, that drop screw is right here. It's right here. Using our drop screw regulator, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this down and watch what happens. I'm not able to get any let off, and then all of a sudden, I'm moving this drop screw down, and all of a sudden, well, so actually it's still not dropping, which then shows me that all those adjustments that I made to try to fix that using the let off was causing the issue. So now I'm going through and I'm kind of working in tandem, using the drop screw right there, but now we've fixed it. So what happens, again, what usually happens is when technicians are not able to, and I'll artificially do this one so it's easy to see. When technicians come to a piano like this, so now you can see there's no drop, there's no let off, no real drop. What a lot of technicians will do is their first line of trying to fix this is they'll be like, well, if it's not letting off, doing let off, it means I need to lower that let off button, right? Wrong. So I'm going to lower that let off button to see if I can get it to let off, and it's still not doing it. So technicians will get kind of really frustrated and be like, I don't know what to do. I've lowered the let off. I've tried to figure this out. Nothing's working. And then you'll realize that, hey, I'm Coburn Cells and I know how to do this. I need to adjust this drop screw. Hey, Coburn, how's it going?
Going good.
So the drop screw is usually the culprit here. And it's a good first thing to do is to be like, hey, I've got the piano out, the action out on my lap. I'm just going to simply go through and see if I can, if it's just letting off at all. So I'm looking at these other ones. I'm like, yeah, these are letting off fine. But then all of a sudden, no, this one's not. So I'm going to, while this is on my lap, just go through and lower this drop screw. A lot of times you're going to be able to see that this drop screw is raised up too high to begin with. You'll see, wow, these seem a little high. And so you'll go ahead and lower them. What I have found over the years, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. We'll probably get some comments like, no, that's not a good starting point. I found that it's usually about 3 threads is what is a good starting point. And so you can see, let's see if we can get really close up. You can kind of see it, but there's kind of 3 threads exposed. And if it's way up or way down, usually we're like, okay, there's something a little bit off. Again, this has been my experience, to each their own, but this drop screw is a major culprit in a lot of issues with regulation. When we as technicians go in there, try to regulate it, and we're not able to get adequate let off, and we start to attack the let off button, adjusting it up, adjusting it down to try to fix this. And more often than not, it's just this drop screw that needs to be adjusted down. Questions? Everybody's just contemplating this. They're like, wow, this is something.
So
I just have to get my mind around, turn it to the right, more drop, turn it to the left, less drop, left, less, right, more.
Yeah. What's essentially happening is, this is the drop screw right above here. And you can see that when I press it down, this little screw goes down. And so you can see it basically, that means that the further down it is, the sooner it's going to touch, sorry about that, touch this rep lever. So let's go ahead and raise it all the way up just to see. This is a good question, Robert. We need to visualize it, you know? We need to see what is going on. Again, if you don't have one of these drop screw regulating tools, the double ones, I really recommend. I'm going to do this early. I'm going to make it, I'm pushing this thing way further down. So now what you're going to see is that this hammer, as soon as I get to that point, is going to drop like crazy. Oof. Oof. It's dropping like so far. So basically what's happening is now we have it so that that knuckle is absolutely, you know, on that, touching that jack. Now it's tripping out. And because that drop screw is regulated, you know, lower, it has plenty of room to drop down, versus now I'm going to raise it up and we're going to see that it doesn't have the ability to drop down. So this is probably a better visual to see it. So here we go, hitting let off right here, and it's not letting off. Why is it not letting off? Because the drop screw is not able to, you see that drop screw is not engaging it soon enough. So this rep lever is just pushing it upwards. Without that drop screw touching it down, it's not able to move downwards and drop. Is that making any sense? I apologize if I'm
Yeah,
not,
because with it all the way up, you don't have, it's creating no space for the drop. You have to have
space for the drop.
screw
Thank
down
you.
to allow that space for that drop to happen.
Exactly. And so one of the things you can do is simply, I'm going to try to go through let off. I have the key pressed right now, and I'm simply going to go through and with the right head attachment right here, screw it downwards. There we go. So drop screw is imperative that you make sure that that is adjusted properly. Otherwise your let off you're not going to feel that bounce. You're not going to feel any let off. It's not going to work properly, and you're going to be kind of pulling your hair out. Again, like we mentioned before, if this rep lever height, you know, that from the jack is adjusted improperly as well, that creates a different set of problems. So again, I'm going to go ahead and adjust this so that this jack is really going to be just floating. So we'll go through, and we don't have that consistent rebound because this is just floating here. You can see right here, it never has that foundation to kind of reset itself to. So do make sure that that's happening. Conversely, what happens, David, if my rep lever is actually adjusted too low? So that means, if you look closely, here we go. The jack is protruding out way too far. What's going to happen? Anybody?
You're going to get the bounce, aren't you? Because it's going to hit. It's going to hit the knuckles. Going to rebound on the jack,
and basically make it so that I can't repeat the note.
Yeah.
Like that. You see that?
Yes,
So
you get stuck.
I get one hit, one power, you know, one blow, but then when I go to redo it, look at, you can even see it. That jack is not able to reset very easily. It says, please help me. I need to get back under. So again, if you don't know these things, yes, Wippens are the worst because it feels like I am pulling at straws. But these two adjustments right here with this rep lever and the drop screw are kind of your ticket to really starting to understand, okay, with these two adjustments, a lot of the issues that you're going to run into are solvable fairly easily. So I highly recommend just kind of dissecting this And the next time you're at a grand piano, you're working at it, play around with this a little bit. See what the drop is doing. And next time you are at a piano where you're trying to get some of these things done, just think of these 2 adjustments and you're going to be ahead.
Yeah. Real quick, I recommend buying that tool from pianoforte.com, not Shaft.
This guy?
Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit cheaper and the shipping's cheaper.
Ooh.
Yeah, so go get it from there. Yeah.
So David, when we were talking grand regulation, weeks ago, we were talking about how to set like a base hammer line before we set, a regulated hammer line.
Yeah.
Would you kind of consider, setting the, a base drop, or at least doing a check of the drop and or checking that rep lever height as kind of an initial setting, just to make sure there's no outliers like you had seen with that?
Yeah, typically what I will do, and then if I'm worried about that, I'll do 2 things. And especially if I'm working with new parts, like, okay, I put on new parts, I will go ahead and make it do a quick lowering, just maybe 1 full turn of all of my drop screws, just to know that, hey, I got drop, I'm going to be able to get let off, boom, I did that. And then the other thing is a quick winking of the jacks. So as you saw right there, hey, this one's working, that's fine. Excuse me, this one's fine-ish, this one's fine, and then I go to this one, plop. No, don't like that. That's gonna cause me issues. So I'm gonna quickly go through, I'm gonna change that rep lever height, and then we're gonna be in business. I'm probably doing it the wrong way because, yeah, so there we go. At least now I'm able to wink this jack and nothing is dropping. Again, we're gonna circle of refinement. We're gonna refine these things more, but you're right, Michael. We wanna make sure that we're not gonna hit any major roadmaps right away.
So we just kind of put that in our, okay, this is another thing to look at, getting things into the ballpark when we start our regulation, before we get into the weeds of it. Yeah.
Exactly. And yes. And I will also say that some of these things might not show up until you're a little bit further in the regulation. For instance, maybe these rep springs are super, what I call spicy. They're way too intense. They're shooting it up like crazy. So then you go to lower them, that rep spring tension, guess what happens? That rep lever is going to be a little bit lower, less stiff, and it may make it so that your jacks are not resetting properly.
One of the things on the repetition lever spring strength is when reshaping hammers, the hammers weigh less, and so the springs can feel like it's stronger. It's actually the same strength, you just reduce the weight that's on them. So I have seen the idea of putting miniature binder clips on the hammer shanks to adjust for the weight that was shaved off.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point. And along that line is sometimes when we go and repin, say the hammer flanges, to Coburn's point, that can change things as well. We're like, wow, there was a lot of friction in these hammer flanges and now there's not. By the way, welcome Coburn. Coburn runs our Denver branch for Artisan Piano Services. It's always awesome to have him join because he's a phenomenal tech.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Thank you for all your input. David, I have a question. These are visual clues. If you're not doing a regulation, you're just working on a grand, but you onesie-twosie, what are some oral clues that you know what? There's no drop here. It's getting a doink, or what type of sounds are you listening for that you can tell, hey, this might be drop, this might be let off?
So let's start with an obvious one, and that would be if the piano is what we call misfiring. So that will be this right here. So if the piano is misfiring, and I had this the other day, so I'll go and I'm tuning the piano just fine. No, let's see if I'll make it really bad. I'm tuning the piano. They're only having me there to tune the piano and maybe fix a couple sticking notes that seem to be causing issues. They don't know what's going on. The last technician couldn't figure it out, and it seems to not repeat. So I'll tune the piano. Shoot, okay. Maybe it's a tight jack flange, so I'll check that and like, no, it's definitely moving freely. So I'll see right there, okay, that jack is not able to reset because that Wippen lever height is not adjusted correctly. So that will be an obvious one, Robert, right there. Now, it could be in that scenario that it's adjusted improperly, or in some cases, that spring right there has become dislodged. So let me show you that. So I'm going through right here. I'm going to just quickly reset this rep lever so that my jack is winking properly. Again, I want to be able to feel just a little bit that it's touching, but I don't want that hammer to really move when I wink this jack. There it goes. I feel it. But what I'm going to do, so now it's working, what I'm going to do is dislodge the spring right here. See that, Robert? And so a lot of times you'll find that it's a simple fix. Simply take your heart spring tool and reinsert that Wippen lever spring. So that's an obvious one right there. Then you were asking about your drop. Let's just do it. Let's go ahead and make it so that drop screw is adjusted way too tall, you're not really gonna notice much. So here it is. It's not achieving drop, but guess what? On my normal blow, it's back checking. It's even though it's not really hitting let off, I'm still able to play the note. So that's going to be one that you usually don't notice until you're doing a regulation, and you're like, man, I'm trying to get this let off done. I'm adjusting things, and I'm not able to get it. But usually the drop isn't something that you notice very quickly, and it's not something that the player is going to notice as much as that other adjustment we just made with the rep lever height. Now,
as a pianist, I've noticed when playing soft, if the drop and the let off aren't happening simultaneously, you can really feel that in the key. You can feel the all the levers hitting against drop, and then you can feel it push back even harder against let off. So it feels like I'm having to fight through two different things when playing the key. Okay. Boom, there's a bump. Boom, there's a second bump. Then boom, it's all the way down to the bottom of the key bed.
Got it.
One of the classes that I saw was by Nathan Mills. It's called "You Don't Know Jack." And it's adjusting drop and let off, so that way there's just one solid bump. Whenever you, as a pianist, whenever you're playing the key, you just feel it bump once as opposed to two separate times. And to do that, you lift up you have the action backwards in front of you. You lift up the back end of the key. And as you're doing that, you'll see the jack, the lever, and you want to see the jack move forward the same time that the lever is moving down. So you want to see one solid movement like that, as opposed to, you don't want to see the jack come up and then over, or you also don't want to see it go over and then up. You want to see it going over and up at the same time. And that's how you adjust. Once you get let off as consistent as you want it to be, you just turn the action around, have it in your lap or on a table, have the drop screwdriver in your hand, and then lift up the key and adjust the drop so that way you see the jack move in one solid motion as opposed to two motions.
Here's a question, Coburn. I think that's a great visual. Would you say that that's easier or about the same amount of work to just simply with the action pulled out, kind of sitting on your lap, as well as on the key bed, just simply going through and adjusting it this way? What are your thoughts? Have you done both ways?
I have done both ways. I feel like pressing the key down and watching it drop the 16th of an inch or so is kind of hard to measure if it's consistent hammer to hammer. Okay. Especially if the repetition springs are uneven, then it kind of bounces a little bit, and that bounce is kind of hard to gauge whether that was it dropping a certain amount or if it was kind of bouncing throughout that amount. The tough thing with adjusting it with it backwards and
Yeah.
seeing the jack move as opposed to two motions, seeing it move in one motion is the knuckles might be heavily worn. And so
Yeah.
that consistent solid motion might not be possible. Let off and drop might be at two separate times depending on the condition of the knuckles.
Sure. Yeah, I would say each of those ways of doing it has their kind of pros and cons. I'm just doing it that way kind of for me. I'm having a hard time just kind of
lift the hammer all the way up out of the way.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can see the jack. If the jack is coming up towards you and then moving forward, then you have to adjust the drop so that way it's coming up towards you and moving forward at the same time, as opposed to two separate motions.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's definitely something you kind of have to look out for. It's if I'm looking at it correctly, I see what you're saying. You kind of go pretty slow when you're doing it, Coburn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then I do like the fact that you kind of have everything right here. I mean, so you just kind of have them elevated like this.
The hammers, yeah, you just have them pushed all the way forward. Mm-hmm.
But then how do you get to the actual? You have to put one down, right?
Yeah, and whenever you're ready to adjust that one.
Whenever you're ready to adjust it. So at least this is good because you can see two separate ways of doing it and decide. I mean, you ask 3 different technicians, how do you adjust drop? You're going to get probably 3 different ways. And so this is great too because you can see, okay, I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to try it that way. Multiple ways of skinning this thing. And it's what works best for you and you get the result that you want. Questions about this, about Wippens? As I pour myself a drink of water. Pretty basic stuff, right? It's not too bad. You got this. It's easy. It's easy once you kind of do it enough.
One thing I was thinking of, David, was and hopefully you can hear me, was something I heard this summer at the conference. They were saying when sometimes you should be careful when adjusting the repetition lever spring, because you can, especially if you have to check for your the Wippen flanges first to make sure that the pinning isn't too loose. And I'm probably not saying this right, but
yeah,
because you can mess up the repetition lever spring, thinking that's the problem when it really is just a repinning. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then to kind of follow up on that, you're right too, because you want to make sure that there's no friction in the rep lever in anywhere. So it's always a good idea. But what a lot of technicians don't look for is friction within the spring itself inside the home it sits in. So we've talked about that before, is making sure that there's making sure that there's no noise or creaking, because that's a lot of times what you'll hear. You'll hear kind of a creak, and you'll be like, what is that? And sure enough, it'll be the I don't know what you would call that, the canal.
You're talking about the older style Wippens that the spring would sit in a groove on the underneath side of the rep lever.
I would say that even modern pianos have that. I think that we're spoiled sometimes seeing this thing right here that has this nice little adjustment, but I would say most of the pianos out there do not have this nice adjustment out there. Which I think, Renner, thank you. I don't know if you guys invented this. It was probably Chickering, because Chickering did crazy awesome stuff and changed everything. But yeah, exactly, Michael. It's the older style. It's the non-Renner style that I'm actually surprised that they're not louder than they are. Considering it feels very archaic the way it's done.
There was a technician up in the Pacific Northwest, Mike Reiter, Reiter, did a class at the 2021 convention. He says if you you do want to check, especially like for concert grand pianos, you do want to make sure that the friction at each center is consistent for that given. You want all the repetition lever centers to be consistent with each other. And if you find that they're too loose, what you can do is actually take like the broaching needle that you use to ream out the center, and you actually just kind of poke it in the side of the felt, kind of fluff up the felt, and add a little bit of friction to the repetition lever center if it's too loose.
To Coburn's point right there, because he just brought up the concept of like I think you mentioned like a concert level kind of work, and it's fun talking not only with concert techs but also school technicians, like university technicians, because these guys get to like really geek out in a fun, amazing way and just like I want everything to be this way. And I think that there's sometimes a luxury that they will have, because it's like, hey, you're meant to make this thing, spend a week on this and make it dialed in. And I think that those are all things that we need to kind of think about. What can you do? I would say that for the most part, your average consumer, your average customer is not, even if they like the idea of doing that, a lot of them won't pay for the time that it takes to do that. Coburn, did they have any idea like how long that would take?
I'm not sure how long that would take, and I'm not sure actually how permanent it is, because obviously these felt centers are they're felt, and so any humidity change can probably globally change all of them to be a little bit tighter or any bit looser on any given day of the week. But I think it would be more of a concern with having stiff repetition lever centers if it's got verdigris on it. Like if you've got stiff hammer flanges because of verdigris, then the same is probably going to be true of the other centers as well.
Absolutely. This is what I love about this industry. There's so many avenues to go into, and it's totally up to you to decide kind of where you want to go. I've had some technicians that are like, hey, I kind of want to do less in-home work and really specialize in the concert level work. Or I want to be more of the university technician. And other people are like, no, I just kind of want to go and tune all these different pianos. And you guys get to each decide. And I think it's worth kind of talking about, hey, what are the expectations for each and what's the pros and cons? Because I will say that the concert level work and then the university technicians, the pros for that is, as a craftsperson, as working this craft, I feel like you get to go to the nth degree in that. And that is such a blast. You also have an expectation that I think is really so high that can be stressful as well. Whereas maybe they don't have the individual customer stress, but they do have this other stress. So it's kind of like mix and match. I'm curious with each of you, does one or the other seem appealing?
Not the university. That is not my league. I'm still getting my head around broaching needle. I'm not sure what that is. So I'm not there yet, Coburn. Sorry.
What about you, Michael? Where do you see yourself? Are you like, hey, I kind of want to dabble in some of the concert level work. I want to dabble in. What are your thoughts?
I need a lot more time just practicing regular regulation until I ever got to the point of dealing with concert level work, because it's not just your tuning skills, it's your voicing skills, it's your regulation skills that have to be at a really high level to start working at concert work, in my opinion.
Yeah. The thing that when I've done concert work is frustrating is actually the politics involved. And you wouldn't think that there are a lot, but sometimes you have the actual piano owner, the people that are like that own the instrument. Then you have the performer, and he's like, I want this to be this way. And I have to be like, yeah, let's dial it in. Let's do that. And then I'll be like, hey, school that owns the piano, this is what we want to do. And they're like, yeah, you're not doing that, because next week we have so-and-so playing and they're going to be doing jazz. And I don't want you to So there is this dance that you have to do with concert level and university work. That's its own beast.
I do have a positive story. Last week, this is elementary level, but this little school has a grant and they bring in a professional pianist and a vocalist every year to do a concert. And I asked if I could work on her piano, but it was pretty much in tune. I didn't want to mess with it. So I thought, okay, I'll do a lubrication and calibration. So I took it out, spent several hours, followed the David Hayes protocol, put it back in, and they were pleased. They said, "Oh, the lady that played the piano regularly, who's a teacher at the school, whose husband is a professional piano player, she said, I like it. It plays so much freer and cleaner, and it has a nicer touch." I was going, hey. So that was a good feeling, even though I didn't mess with the tuning, but it did work, and that was cool. Even though it's an elementary school and it's an old 1940s Kawhi, but they really liked it, and it was a good concert. So that was a good feeling, but it was scary. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, when they sit down at the piano, because I'd have to own it as well, either way.
Yeah, totally. Or you just blame David.
That's a good win.
That's an amazing win. And it just goes back to the fact that we get to, on a daily basis, share with the world, the musical world, the piano world, what we know. And how cool is that? The more we get to level up our skill, the more we learn things, we get to share that. We literally get to share that with our customers and just create an amazing experience. And that right there is what just makes me so excited when I go to the customer's house and we do these things. So you're going to find that you're going to get that more and more and more, Robert. Every time you go, you're going to get a call afterwards, 10 minutes, and then it'll be like, what did you do to my piano? And you're going to be like, they're like, I love it. Like, oh, okay, cool. It's so fun.
That was good because I balanced out with the damper in the spinet today. So it kind of, I'm back at ground zero.
David, do you stay for concerts?
Say it again.
Do you stay for concerts?
If I can avoid it, absolutely, I do not stay for concerts. I can't do it. I can't. My hair's gray enough. I hear everything. I worry about everything. It's just so. I analyze everything. No, I have had concerts where I have to go and tune in the intermission. I have to do stuff like that. But if I can avoid it, I'm like, hey, may the games be in your favor. I'm out.
So, David, that actually poses a question. What is the reasoning for needing to tune in the intermission? Is because they're playing a piece that is so dynamic and they're really being aggressive on the piano that it is going to knock the unisons out, or what's the reasoning?
Here's my opinion on it. It's my opinion, right? I think it's psychological. I think it's the placebo effect to just know, okay, they came in here and he tuned it up again, so it's really ready to go. That being said, the pianists cannot. I mean, if you've been around these concerts, I mean, they're wailing on it. So that is possible that they can go way out. It can go out of tune. They're cleaning up unisons. But I think overall, it's more of just like, okay, as the performer, I know it's just been kind of tightened up again. I'm good to go. I don't have that as a barrier mentally to go and do a great performance. That's my experience. That's been my experience. Stacy, what do you think? You're around high-level people that are playing the piano.
I've seen them go out of tune before intermission. Like some of my techs, and I'm talking like classical, not like modern contemporary artists, but some of them are wailing on it. And in fact, one concert I went to recently, I was like, that lyre is going to snap right off. He was pounding that so hard. I was like watching it wiggle and I was like, oh, I was like getting nervous. And then the tech was like, it was out of tune already. And I've seen that. It's not super often, but like those classical pianists, because I used to run this concert series. And so every week we'd have someone new. And so I had to make sure it was always like tuned before. And then, we'd always check it in the intermission, but it was the classical pianist that would throw it out of tune. But the rest, I think as a musician though, I'm not a musician. like really professionally, but I would just want to like you said, that safety net of, okay, if something happens, because they're performing and they're performing on a piano that they just saw probably the day before or the day of, and they just want to know that it's gonna like function the way it needs to, because that would be, they're practicing 8 hours a day. Some of these guys, like, it's wow. So
all those professional pianists that go around to do performances, every concert's a different piano.
yes.
It's not like they travel with a piano.
Nope, they have to take what you have, and they just are hoping that it's, because it really affects them when it's not,
Yeah, I would say the experience that I actually did, and I enjoyed it, is I was doing tuning for this quartet, and they were recording all day long. And so they had me booked for the entire day, and they would just, in between takes, I would just kind of go through it, and that was fine. I don't know why, but that was enjoyable. That was fun. I can kind of do paperwork, and then, like, I don't know, do some push-ups and just in between stuff, and then I'd come back to it. And I'm like, all right, we're a little bit off, and I'm going to tune this up. And it was a good experience. So I did enjoy that. I don't mind as much when it's not just a solo piano. If there's other instruments around, like, that's a little bit more like, okay, it'll be drowned out a little bit if there's something that goes off a little bit. But when it's a solo performance on a piano, and I've been to concerts where I'm like what Stacey said, ooh, that is out of tune. That is out. That D or that C, that's off. And then it's just like, I don't want to, no.
And it's really hard to make them happy sometimes, because if they're renting a piano, like we would deal with people who are renting piano for like a Gershwin concert or something, and the pianist would come practice on the piano before it was delivered, and they always had so much feedback on, like, we would voice it and regulate it, and just this note, this part, this upper. It was just really hard to please them, but we did. You do your best, but yeah, that's probably the hardest one.
Yeah, no, it's its own beast, and I have mad respect for the concert pianists that just, they do it, they sit through the concert, they enjoy it. I can't compartmentalize. I can't separate myself up enough to do it. So, but more power to those who can.
Going back to the
those
Wippens,
out there. Well,
Go ahead.
I had a question about Wippens, but I could wait.
Boy, I'm either
Robert.
way.
We talked about pianos going out of tune. Technicians out there, how do you handle the stress of worrying about, is that tuning going to hold? Are they going to call me back tomorrow? I don't know why that's been going through my mind, because I've been tuning more pianos lately. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is a new customer. They don't know anything about me. So
I would say it's good to always. Yeah, it is stressful. And I, to this day, will leave a customer. I'm like, oh, I hope that holds in tune. I was noticing how hard they were playing. I think that it's better to have that mindset than be like, it's going to be perfect. We're students of our craft, and we always need to be humble enough to come back and do stuff. So I just found out that one of the piano stores that we're working for is implementing a new system. And the system is if they have the floor technician tune the piano, and it's going to go back, they have them fill out a thing. And if it's out in a week, they have to, have them come back and tune it for free before it goes out. And so it's good to push ourselves. It's good to do that. I do recommend, if you find that you have a high-end player that's really wailing on it after you're done, really befriend that person and just be, hey, I'm here for you. I would love to know how it works out. And as soon as if it does go, I want to know so I can come back. And you're going to learn a lot about your tuning stability.
Yeah, that 30-day guarantee is your friend when you walk out the door.
Yeah.
When you remind them. So I don't know why it's been stressing me.
Yeah, I would say that before we had that 30-day, people were more stringent. They were more intense on checking over that tuning right then and there, because you're like, he's going to be gone. I'm never going to see him again. I need to dissect this. But once we said, hey, 30-day calls if you have any issues, they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to take a breather. We're good. See you later.
I'd say for me, I've been doing so many pianos that haven't been tuned in so long. I know that it's going to drift out of tune anyway, regardless of how good of a tuning I put on it. So
Absolutely.
that eliminates a lot of stress on my part, because I know that it's going to be in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, it's not going to hold a super long time anyway.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Corbin, we're before we end, what was your question about the Wippen?
Spring assisted Wippens with the little spring on the back. I didn't know if that was already mentioned, but I had hammer tails on a young chain hitting the springs on the backside when letting go of the key, and was wondering if there was any way to get that clicking sound gone.
So what I've had to, so just so people know what Coburn's talking about, comment below on YouTube if you guys are commenting and you disagree. I'm curious what people think. But what we're talking about is at the end, where we're talking about this right here, this Wippen flange. It will have a cord. It'll be like a corded flange, and then there will be a spring on the end of the Wippen. And that is kind of like a very similar to an upright, like your Yamahas, where it has the butt with the spring assist on the flange. It will have something similar on the Grand. I cannot stand those. I feel like they're all over the place. They're hard to regulate. And what Coburn just said is sometimes those springs right here can be hit by the tails. Now, Coburn, is it one of those grand pianos that has a continuous hammer rest rail, or are they an individual cushion like this?
I don't recall actually, but it was actually 2 young chain grands in one day, and they were both doing the same thing. And I didn't know if that was also because the action brackets might have been expanding.
It could very well be. If it's a young chain, generally speaking, a lot of times they had that continuous bar, that rest rail. And in the past, what I've done is like, all right, I'm not able to get the blow distance I want, but I'm going to raise up this bar and then raise up this hammer so that when it rebounds, and same with my back checking, it's not going as down to hit those springs. And so it's a series of compromises, essentially. That's a great question. Spring assisted Wippens. We need to do a class on that, and with somebody that maybe appreciates them, because that is not me. And I'm sure that somebody out there can kind of lay some knowledge on me, even like, hey, if you do this, this, and this, they work great. The people that I've talked to in the circles that I'm around, people are like, no, I'm not a huge fan. But again, sorry if you're a company making spring assisted Wippens. Hats off to you. You're making something good for you. But anyways, like and subscribe. And everybody who wants to be a part of these, just go ahead and subscribe, because we're doing this all week long, and we usually post once a week on this. I am thrilled to be doing this, and like everybody here gets to share what they know, just like Robert did with his customer. He just kind of blew them away, just by learning something and having the courage to go and try it. And so all of you all are doing that, and I'm proud of you. I'll see you next week, and we'll figure something else to work on. And I'm thinking it's going to be pedal regulation and lubrication for a grand, because that seems to come up a lot. So it'll be a weird lesson where I'm underneath the piano. It'll be awkward, but we're there together. We'll do it. And I'll show you exactly how I regulate the pedals, lubricate the pedals, maybe in both the grand and the upright, because I think there's some curiosity, there's some questions surrounding that, what Artisan's protocol is. So have a great week. I'll see you next week. Cheers.
See you later.
Thanks, David.